Welcome to the MLB Slate Breakdown. I'm Jason Gilbo. With me is Brent Hine, taking a look at tonight's slate on FanDuel and DraftKings. 15 games here. Got some solid pitching options. I feel kind of all the way down. You got some cheap guys down here as well, and obviously like Kluber going tonight.
Yeah, it's a very good pitching slate. Like there is a handful of guys, maybe two handfuls of guys that you can consider here. Some interesting stats too.
That's a great way to put it. First game here, we got Miami and Baltimore. Kevin Gossman taking on Jose Urena. Man, I'm gonna lose this. All right, here we go. Kevin Gossman taking on Jose Urena here. Kevin Gossman 8.5 on DraftKings. Do you have any interest in him here?
It's not a terrible price for him against the Miami offense that we have been targeting at times this season. Biggest concern is Gossman has basically just been a giant roller coaster. I don't feel like he has a lot of strikeout upside in this matchup. There's guys that I prefer in that same price range that I think are a little bit safer and have more upside. That being said, I wouldn't rule him out in tournaments, but I think I'm going to be looking other places here.
Yeah, I agree with you. The price tag is enticing, the matchup's enticing. Like you said, he's just been kind of all over the place this year. He's one of those guys, I won't tell you to not play him, even though he probably won't find his way into my lineup because, there's a couple guys. There's a guy for only 300 more that I really like tonight. But yeah, Gossman's obviously in play because I don't really like targeting him here outside of maybe like a Justin Bour.
I mean, there's a couple guys that I don't necessarily mind targeting. Like Gossman has been giving up more power to righties this season, a little bit more hard contact to them as well. So I don't hate using like JT Realmuto, Anderson, Castro that you mentioned. It's interesting to note that Realmuto 325 ISO 438 WOBA against Gossman's fastball. Lewis Brinson has decent numbers against it. JB Shuck is an interesting like cheap option. So is like Miguel Rojas if you're looking to get some exposure here.
There were not a lot of numbers, especially in the power department, that popped up against his fastball, which was concerning. Of course, just because that's really been his worst pitch this year. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where it's like I kind of wish I think he needs another pitch to rely on a little bit here.
Yeah, and as like you said, there are a few guys that have some decent power numbers, but I don't know. I think I'm probably going to take the shots on like the value guys, like the guys that I mentioned, the JB Shucks and whatnot, if I need a value option.
Yeah. Baltimore side of things here with Urena, I feel like I'm not going to fall for that. Like it was like a 5-run total last night. It dropped a little bit. Like I'm not falling for Baltimore here.
I'm not really looking at Baltimore outside of like Jace Peterson in that leadoff spot, who's definitely just a good value option here. Urena, a guy worst against lefties, 320 WOBA allowed this season, 321 dating back to last season. Fly balls, 38% hard contact as well. So I would be looking at the lefties. Unfortunately, you're maybe only getting 3: Jace Peterson, Pedro Alvarez, and Chance Sisco. Peterson, obviously, like I mentioned, a decent value second baseman at only 2,600 on DraftKings.
Yeah, dirt cheap. I'm with you. Like, there's not a ton of attractive options here. I don't hate Machado. Good numbers off that 95 mile per hour fastball. 426 WOBA, 319 ISO, kind of as you'd expect. If you want to pay up at shortstop, like he's a fine option.
Yeah, I could agree there.
Anyone else you want to talk about here?
Nah.
Cincinnati and Pittsburgh. This is kind of the same story on both sides here. We're targeting the lefties against both these pitchers that have struggled, but definitely more on the Pittsburgh bats here.
Yeah, I'm going back to the well with the Pittsburgh lefties. Like I know they were a disappointment the last time they faced Matt Harvey. I'm still going to attack him. I mean, 406 WOBA, 309 ISO allowed to lefties this season, 418 WOBA dating back to last season. I love the lefties here, and they're not terribly expensive. Like Austin Meadows, 4,300 is a little pricey, but not terrible. Josh Bell, 3,500. Colin Moran, 3,200. Man, it's a really good spot for that like group of lefties.
Yeah, it really is. And if Moran's hitting clean up here, like 3,200 third base, I mean, if you're not paying up there, like that's an excellent value.
Yeah, it really is.
So yeah, I like the lefties in that spot. And then Cincinnati side, I'm a little less high on because for some reason Cole's pitched very well against them.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it is. Like I know he's introduced a slider a little bit more this season, and maybe that has something to do with it. As they don't have great numbers against sliders outside of like Jesse Winker, and that very well could be the case. Like he could just be using that to get off of the issues that he's had against some of the lefties. But I still don't hate using some of these guys like Jesse Winker, like I mentioned. Shebler, Barnhart, some interesting names there.
Yeah, definitely are. Like I think they're solid GPP bats. I don't mind like Avado and Jeanette, of course. Upper 4Ks. I don't feel like those prices are too outrageous. You mentioned the slider, but I mean also Cole's a guy who will throw that sinker as well, about 39-40% of the time, and those are two pitches that Votto and Jeanette hit well. Jeanette a little bit more power against it, 262 ISO.
Yeah, it's interesting to note the last time he faced off against Cincinnati, he only threw the slider 10% of the time, but two of his last three games, it's been over 34%. So it is definitely a pitch that he's trying to work in a little bit more.
He's been getting a lot of swing and misses with it, so if that's something that comes on, we need to keep an eye on Cool.
41% whiff rate with it.
Yeah, that's solid stuff.
Yeah.
Next game here, we got Tampa Bay and New York. Nathan Eovaldi, Jonathan Lasagia.
Jonathan, I never pitched in AAA, so I'm not relevant.
Nathan Eovaldi revenge game?
Possibly.
I'm not exactly picking on him here, outside of one bat.
Didi.
Actually, it's Brett Gardner.
Oh, man. Really? Brett Gardner?
Can I make my case?
You can make your case.
So Eovaldi's obviously a guy. He has that heater. 97 miles per hour, still has it. Gardner, for some reason, I mean, huge numbers against fastballs over 96 miles an hour, 472 with 304 ISO. And we know Eovaldi's a guy who has struggled with lefties. And I don't mind, Gregorius either, because the hard contact rate has still been there in a small sample size. But when you date back to Eovaldi's like healthy years, it's always been the lefties.
Yeah, I can get behind that. And he's a guy like, I don't know, he might be an interesting tournament option here against the Yankees. If you're just looking at, like, they are still striking out a decent amount against right-handed pitching. He does have that really high velocity fastball that's outside of Gardner and Hicks and Andujar, who only has like 3 batted ball events. These guys just really struggle making contact with that pitch.
Yeah, they really do. Like, I think Eovaldi is an interesting name. I mean, 5'3" is an SP2. The problem is I have Reynaldo Lopez for 600 more, who I really like in that spot as well. But I do agree that he's an interesting name here.
Yeah, Lopez is a guy that I do have a little bit more interest in, but like been able to get away with picking on the Yankees a little bit recently. So like in tournaments, I don't hate taking a shot on him if you're looking to pay up for like Kluber and some expensive bats here.
Yeah, I agree. And it's really just the lefties if you do want to pick on him, but I'm not terribly high.
Yeah, I don't. Is Greg Bird expensive? What's his price? 4,100. That's not a terrible price for Bird.
No, it's not. I mean, all the lefties are pretty much reasonably priced.
I just realized Greg Bird looks like really freaking old in his picture on DraftKings.
It's those injuries, man. They take a toll.
Apparently, he looks like he's like 55 years old.
Other side of this game, obviously, a guy we don't know a ton about. I will say Jacob Bowers is a guy I still have a lot of interest in.
Yeah, I kind of have a little bit of interest in picking on this guy just because, like, he has some high strikeout numbers in the minors. That being said, it's just AA and like single A. Like this dude's never even pitched in AAA. Like we've been through this before. Like I just don't like taking pitchers coming up like that are skipping a level. I mean, he's got like a 3 ERA across 10 starts, split between high A and AA. So like, if he was that good, I would imagine the numbers would be a little bit lower. I don't hate taking a shot on like Bowers and some of these bats just because don't really know what to expect out of this guy.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, I mean, I think he's the only reason he's filling in right is for Tanaka, who hit the DL. Like, they don't have a ton of depth right now. Um, looking at these guys like, Joey Wendell, lefty here, 2'9", second baseman. I don't even hate like a Willie Adames. I'm kind of looking at the young studs here.
Yeah, I don't mind taking a shot on some of them just because they're all pretty darn cheap.
Yeah, that's about it. And they're going to be contrarian.
Yeah.
Next game here, we got Washington, Toronto, Gio Gonzalez versus Aaron Sanchez. I think Gio's an interesting option here, mainly just because he's throwing a ton of off-speed stuff, and that's something that I like to target Toronto with.
Yeah, I know he got shelled in his last outing, but outside of that, like, Gio Gonzalez has been ridiculously consistent this season, and, like, I don't know, I feel like he has a pretty bad reputation around the DFS industry because people just hate Gio Gonzalez. I kind of like him in this spot. Like, he's way too cheap, I think, on DraftKings, and makes for a really, really good GPP option. Like, a little bit higher than league average strikeout rate, but he faces an offense that does strike out a decent amount against lefties. So I feel like he's in a really good spot. Like, the biggest concern I have is the park, but I still think he's a very good option here just because he doesn't give up a lot of hard contact to either side of the plate. Fly balls aren't really there. Like, it's just a really solid spot for him, I think.
Yeah, he was the guy I was mentioning that I liked for only 300 more from Gossman. It's Gio in this spot. A guy who has a good curveball, and not a lot of these Toronto bats really hit the curveball well and have good contact rates really outside of Solarte, who's kind of their only real contact guy. I don't really buy into the Toronto 4-5 Vegas total either, and I think actually Washington should probably be a bigger favorite.
Yeah, I definitely think they should. Like, I put him in the pitching article, and I kind of noted he does need to work around like Hernandez and Solarte and Smoke, but if he gets around those guys, like, he's in for a pretty easy outing, I think.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I mean, really outside those names, there's not a lot of power. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'm with you. And I'm not really looking to pick on either of those, with those names on Gio tonight.
No, I think there's definitely better places you can go.
Yeah. Washington side, Aaron Sanchez is a guy who's been struggling with walks and struggling with lefties, and I don't think this is really the lineup to really mess around with that. I have a lot of interest in Washington bats here.
Washington is one of my favorite stacks on the slate, and there are a lot of great ways to go here. Like, you mentioned Sanchez, 405 WOBA allowed to lefties this season, 372 dating back to last season. It is a good spot for these lefties, and there are a whole heck of a lot of them. Like, you have Adam Eaton leading off, who dating back to last season, 202 ISO, 422 WOBA against right-handed pitching, almost 80% contact rate, 85% contact rate against them this season. Good numbers against sinkers, which is, Sanchez's primary pitch. Adam Eaton's one of my favorite options across this slate tonight.
Yeah, I'm with you. Another guy I really like here is Matt Adams, who handles that sinker well too. 444 WOBA, 324 ISO, only a 38% ground ball rate, 82% contact rate. Guy who just gets a ton of lift on it. Like, he's a nice mid-range first base option I feel like you can go with because, I'm not like there's a first base that you can pay up for, but I mean, I kind of like a lot of mid-range first base guys.
Yeah, I do too, and I like putting like Eaton, Soto, and like Matt Adams together in a lineup. And you can like get away from the expensive like Bryce Harper 5,200, like Juan Soto 4,400 is still very, very good price. And if you really wanted to, you could you could throw Daniel Murphy in there and get a full lefty stack, or even like a Wilmer Defoe towards the bottom of that lineup.
Yeah, you definitely could. So I mean, lefties are very much in play there.
Yeah, and even the righties, like if you wanted to throw in like a Turner or something like that, feel free.
Yeah, a guy with some good sinker ball numbers. I mean, and also obviously that speed too.
Yeah, for sure.
Next one, we got Minnesota and Cleveland. Corey Kluber taking on Kyle Gibson. Corey Kluber, your cash game guy here in this spot. I know he's expensive, but 15-game slate, you have some cheap SP2s. You have a lot of value. I think you can get away with using them at that price.
I 100% agree. And I just want to say it is getting increasingly difficult as the season goes on to find new ways to write that Corey Kluber is a good play.
Just keep going with however innings he goes without walking someone.
There you go. Like, it's just insane. Like, the dude's arguably the best pitcher in the majors. I mean, you could make a case for a couple other guys, but he's right there with them. Excellent numbers, both sides of the plate. Like, there's just really nothing to say. Like, Corey Kluber is the safest arm on the slate, probably has the highest upside and the highest floor. Roll him out in cash games if you want to fade in tournaments, because there's a couple arms that might be cheaper options that might be a little bit better suited for tournaments. Feel free, but like, if you want to use them, use them.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly it. It's when we talk about these guys like Kluber, Scherzer, it's just go for it. Like, they're just providing such safe floors here. No matchup is entirely too tough for them. This is a Minnesota team that's kind of been pretty bland this year outside of a couple bats. A little disappointing Miguel Sano got sent down because that was a couple strikeouts in the lineup, but it's still Kluber.
Yeah, that's something I actually put in the article. I was like, the matchup for Kluber gets a little worse now that Sano's not in the lineup. Man, I'm hoping one day I get sent to Single A, Fort Myers. It must be nice to go down there.
Yeah, it is nice. It is a good spot. It's warm. I'm sure he'll like it.
I'm sure he will too. I think they did it just so like it'll be like hot and he'll sweat a bunch and lose all that weight.
It's very true. The humidity should drain him.
Yes.
Cleveland side things here. Kyle Gibson. Gibson's been decent this year, allowing under a 300 WOBA to both sides of the plate. Obviously, a guy who does roll a lot of ground balls. I'm not terribly high in picking on him with these Indians prices. I feel like if I'm paying up, there's a couple other options I'd rather go with.
I completely agree. You could still look at like the Brantleys and the Ramirez and things like that if you're really wanting to, but like, it's cool. I don't know. Kyle Gibson, another GPP, I think, arm, not someone that I'm terribly excited about using, but has been better on the road than at home this season, like markedly better on the road. And, this is a pretty good park here in Cleveland, but I still think you could roll out Kyle Gibson as a tournament option, but I'm not really looking to pick on him here.
No, I'm not either. Like you said, it's the main bats. If you want to get exposure, it's the guys who've been doing it all year, but that's about it.
Yeah, like Brantley's the guy I think that stands out the most to me, just because Gibson's still throwing that sinker a decent amount, and Brantley just insane contact numbers and decent numbers against sinkers.
Yeah, same with like Ramirez.
Yeah.
But that dude just mashes everything at this point. Moving on here, San Diego and Atlanta. Clayton Richard taking on Brandon McCarthy. This is an interesting game because I feel like there's a couple of one-offs that I like. It's two guys that I think Clayton Richard's been pitching a little bit better, but I actually like a couple of Atlanta bats against him.
I could get behind a couple of Atlanta bats. Richard, a guy, a sinker ball pitcher for the most part, sinker slider. Ozzy Albies, obviously we know he rakes against lefties, 248 ISO, 397 WOBA dating back to last season, but really good numbers against those sinkers. Freddie Freeman, who has been just ridiculous. He has like 400 home runs over the last week. Is someone that you can look at as well, even though it's a lefty on lefty spot for him. But yeah, and I don't know if I can stomach the Braves getting shut down. Like the last time I used them, I still have like bad memories.
Is it Vargas?
Yes.
Yeah, it's the name we don't mention on this pod. Yeah, I'm with you. It's Albies and Freeman here. I don't mind whatever catcher gets behind the dish, whatever it's Kurt Suzuki or Tyler Flowers. Both those guys hit lefties obviously fairly well. Flowers been absolutely insane, over 500 WOBA, but both of them just way too cheap for their production.
Yeah, and like if it is Suzuki, like he's very interesting just because, like I mentioned, obviously good numbers against lefties, but as I mentioned with Richard, throwing that slider like 28% of the time. Suzuki 318 ISO, 365 WOBA against sliders, pretty good numbers there.
Yeah, like a 70% contact rate against sliders is fairly solid.
Yeah, I mean it's not 82% like Nick Markakis, but
no, nothing's like Nick Markakis.
Soon to be all-star Nick Markakis.
Oh, man. I don't know if I can handle that.
He deserves it.
He's been good. San Diego bats here. I do think there's a couple interesting one-offs that you can use. I mean, Decent Park, I'm kind of looking at the lefties. I do think McCarthy's going to be able to kind of work around most of this team. I don't really have a ton of interest just because I'd rather use you know, Ronaldo Lopez for $1 or 100 less. But I do think you can take some shots here against him.
There's a couple bats that I do have some interest in. Obviously, McCarthy, a guy really struggling against lefties this season, 362 ISO or 362 WOBA, 240 ISO. We know this is a good park for lefties. Corey Spangenberg, a name that kind of stands out to me, 171 ISO, 336 WOBA, dating back to last season against cutters, which is a pitch that McCarthy is throwing about 24% of the time. Spangenberg, 200 ISO. So a pretty solid number there. 446 WOBA against it as well. So I think Spangenberg's the guy that I do have the most interest in here, and he's still fairly cheap across the industry, 3,500 on DraftKings, and he's been hitting the ball pretty well recently.
Yeah, he was the guy for me. And I also don't hate a cheap Freddie Galvis and GPPs either.
Yeah, he's someone that I could get behind as well.
Yeah, just those guys here. Don't have interest in Hosmer ever, really, just because there's other first basemen in the world.
Yeah, it's
Colorado, Texas. Interesting game here. Yohander Mendez taking on Chad Bettis. Wind's blowing in, but it's a hot-ass day in Texas with a lefty that has over a 5 ERA in AAA and is making a start here.
Yeah. Rockies outside of Coors, I don't know. We might be setting ourselves up for disappointment, but I think the Rockies are obviously a very, very, very good stack here.
Yes, I am all aboard the LeMahieu train, Arenado, Trevor Story, Ian Desmond, Chris Iannetta, all these guys, and I don't even hate Charlie Blackmon either.
Yeah, I think Tommy Murphy might be my guy from the Colorado side, projected in that lineup, and is pretty darn cheap on DraftKings at $3K.
Ooh, yeah, I mean, you got some cheap bats in the back because, Cuevas is a guy who'll get in there as well.
Yeah, Cuevas it should get in there. Not really very good numbers dating at all, 0.071 ISO, 298 WOBA against lefties, but 85% contact rate. Eventually he's going to put it together. Desmond, definitely a solid option. But yeah, DJ LeMahieu really stands out as a really, really good option here.
He does. And he's only 4.6, which I feel like is a reasonable price tag. And even Arenado and Trevor Story at 4.9, I don't think that's really overpriced for them in this spot. I'm kind of just locking in Arenado actually on this slate.
Yeah, it's an Arenado slate for sure.
Yeah, so these guys I think will be popular. I think we won't be the only crowd on Colorado.
I think it's safe to say we will not be the only ones touting Colorado tonight.
No. Texas side things here. Couple bats stand out. Bettis, a guy who's been worse off against righties, which is kind of interesting because Texas does have a lot of right-handed or left-handed bats. Shin-Soo Choo's been hitting the ball really well. Adrian Beltre, if there weren't other third basemen on this slate, I feel like he would stand out, but there's just too many of the name.
Yeah, it's really tough to pay for Adrian Beltre when I can get some of these other bats for right around the same price range. Yeah, man, Texas does stand out as an interesting, very interesting contrarian stack, I think.
They do, because Nomar Mazara, 4K, Chu, 4.6, pretty reasonable. Profar Gallo, all in this mid-range, and they got some pop against a guy who doesn't miss a lot of bats.
No, he really doesn't. If you look against that four-seamer, he throws about 41% of the time. Chu, 250 ISO, 387 WOBA. You have Profar, 241 ISO, 369 WOBA. Joey Gallo, 625 ISO. It's a pretty powerful number. You have Chirinos, Guzman. There's some interesting bats here, and these guys aren't terribly expensive.
No, they're not. And they're going to go overlooked. I think Chirinos is a great GPP catcher option at 3K. Got some pop against righties, and obviously Bettis is allowing a 205 ISO to right-handers this year and a 37% hard contact rate.
Yeah, I could definitely get behind that.
Anyone else here?
No.
Philly and Milwaukee. Brent Suter taking on Jake Arrieta. Kind of a weird game here.
Yeah, this would be a spot where normally I would like to use Jake Arrieta if it wasn't for the fact that he just got shelled by this Milwaukee team last time out, 4 earned runs in 5 innings. And it was at home, which was disappointing because like Arrieta's been lights out at home for the most part this season. That being said, like at that price, 7,400 in tournaments, I would probably be willing to go back to the well just because like there's some strikeouts in that lineup.
There definitely is, because I really don't have a lot of interest outside of Christian Yelich. He's the only one I kind of like here. Doesn't get great lift on that sinker, but I mean, still a guy who's 40% contact rate or hard contact rate, 4.32 WOBA, 198 ISO, and a guy who I feel like will kind of get lost here on this slate.
Yeah, and I could get behind some Eric Dames. Obviously, just rakes against right-handed pitching, dating back to last season, 300 ISO, 395 WOBA. Still a pretty high strikeout rate at like 27%, but also decent numbers against that sinker. I mean, 267 ISO, 386 WOBA, only 48% ground ball rate.
Yeah, so we get some lift on it. But I'm with you. I don't mind taking some shots with Arrieta and GPPs. I mean, this is still a Brewers team, like you said, that has some strikeouts. I mean, projected lineup right around like 23%.
Yeah, I would maybe sprinkle in like a Shaw if you're going to get exposure to Milwaukee. Like, I don't think I would use any of these guys as one-offs. I would probably just stack them.
Stack up like the lefties here.
Yeah, even though Arrieta's been really good against lefties.
Yeah. Philly side of things here, you got Brent Suter's a guy who's struggled up against right-handers. 32% line drive rate, 35% fly ball rate. Rhys Hoskins was nice to see over the last few days get going a little bit.
Yeah, and it is nice to see against Suter's four-seam fastball that's only like 86 miles an hour. Rhys Hoskins has some really, really impressive numbers. It's only 6 batted ball events, but 1,500 ISO, 1,049 WOBA, and a 100% contact rate.
And his average distance, 350 feet.
Hey, Carlos Santana hasn't beat an average distance of 352 feet, and it's a larger sample for Carlos Santana.
I like some Phillies bats here, needless to say.
Yeah, I could get behind a couple of these guys as some one-offs here just because Suter isn't a guy that I think is a very good pitcher. Like, he's been a somewhat consistent arm this season, and I think that speaks more to the Brewers' rotation than it does actually Suter.
I think so. And I think a lot of times, too, is Suter's a guy who will just kind of hover over the 5-inning mark and then just let the bullpen do the rest.
Yeah.
Which always gets, I mean, I think that's always a risk, too, when you're taking against Milwaukee because, Jesus, some of those guys, it's like I don't even expect points out if it's like after the 6th.
Yeah, you're basically just hoping that they get a home run in the first couple innings, and then they just won't be able to do much of anything else after that.
No. Hoskins, we'll start here. Reasonable price, 4.3, a guy who's obviously mashed lefties dating back to last year. Santana, if you want to roll like an Aaron out there, I don't hate him for 3,300 if you want a cheap outfielder.
Yeah, and you're pretty much guaranteed that Josh Hader is he pitched, 2 days ago in relief, so you're just hoping these guys do damage before he gets into the game.
Yeah, because he's 2 to 3 innings of that, like after the 6th, and he's going to rack up like 8 strikeouts.
Yeah.
At what point can we just use him in DFS?
When they start using him a little bit deeper, like I think the most he's pitched is like 2 2/3 this season, or like maybe a little bit deeper. But I don't know. Like he'd be a guy. I mean, how many? He's averaging like 10 fantasy points a game. He's not like going like 1 2/3 innings most nights. That's crazy.
It's insane. If there's ever a small slate, I might take a shot there.
back on the 19th against Minnesota, 2 1/3 innings, 20.7 DraftKings points.
Oh, I remember that night vividly because I had like Kepler and Rosario, and I saw him come in. I need maybe like 8 points between them. No, nothing.
That dude's just insane.
Man, yeah. Anyone else here you want to talk about?
No.
Moving on, Detroit and Chicago. Reynaldo Lopez taking on Mike Fiers. Reynaldo Lopez, a guy who's pitched well against Detroit this season, has had a couple blow-up starts where he didn't make it past 3, and I think that's the reason why he's below 6K on DraftKings. But bounced back with 2 good starts against 2 good offenses.
Yeah, he's had a couple decent starts back to back. Obviously, got shelled by Cleveland a few starts ago, but looked okay against Detroit last time out. He's been a roller coaster this season, that's for sure. Still pretty high on him. I do like him in the spot, and it comes down to more about just the price than anything else. Like at 5,900 on DraftKings, if he goes 6 innings, gets you 5 or 6 strikeouts, maybe gives up 1 earned run, and doesn't get snake bitten by walks, and has a chance at a win, that's a pretty good outing. And this offense without Miggy in there, even though Miggy wasn't really that great this season anyways, still is just so bad. This offense just sucks.
Yeah, and when you're getting Hicks in there, that just adds a higher strikeout back. Because like you said, while Miggy wasn't doing it, he wasn't a guy who struck out a ton either.
Yeah, exactly.
And Lopez here is going to go up against a fairly right-handed heavy lineup. Leonis Martin, Candelario, Victor Martinez, but there's no real concern outside of Victor Martinez, or with Victor Martinez. So he should be able to get through it. Like you said, it's the walks that's always the concern.
Yeah, I basically just consider him facing 2 lefties tonight because Victor Martinez is about as effective as a traffic cone holding a baseball bat at this point in his career.
And around Detroit, if you haven't been there, there are so much construction cones, actually. So, yeah.
You could probably just steal a bunch of them and stack them up, and people would put a Victor Martinez jersey on them, and people would figure it was actually Victor Martinez.
Yeah, they'd be like, hey, Victor Martinez got a little bit of a tan down there in Dominican Republic over the offseason. You don't have any interest, I'm assuming, picking on him with any of the lefties?
No, not tonight.
Chicago side of things here, Mike Fiers, a guy who's been up and down as well. We've reached the roller coaster section, I guess, of pitching.
Yeah, Mike Fiers is a guy, if Lopez wasn't in that same, I guess, significantly cheaper, and there weren't a couple other tournament arms in that same price range, Fiers would be a guy that I might actually consider in tournaments, but he's just not someone that I'm really looking at tonight. I don't really see a reason to even take that risk.
No, I don't either. And I kind of don't mind taking a couple bats against him. Yohan Moncada at 3.7 is interesting for his power. Jose Abreu at 4K is interesting. Yomer Sanchez and Daniel Palka. It's the front 4 hitters here that I usually have some GPP interest in.
Yeah, that 1 through 4 is kind of where I would be looking. And they do make a very interesting tournament stack. Obviously, Yohan Moncada has been up and down this season as well. Not very good over the last 10 games. Obviously, a guy that you're always worried about with strikeouts, but it's a very interesting spot, I think, for him against Fiers, who we know is a fly ball guy, really struggles against lefties. I kind of like him here in this spot as a one-off.
I do too. It's a small sample size, but 370 ISO against that low velocity fastball that Fiers throws. I know he works in obviously some sliders and changeups that could give Moncada trouble, but I feel if Moncada gets a fastball, he'll jump all over it.
Yeah, let's be honest. Any pitch outside of a fastball gives Moncada trouble, and it's not like he's even that good of a fastball hitter at this point.
That's true. What's that dude from Major League? Forgot his name. He can't hit the curveball.
I don't even remember.
God, I'll come to me. Anyone else here?
No.
Houston, Kansas City next. You got Jake Junis taking on Charlie Morton. Charlie Morton for me is a no man's land. I feel I might as well pay up for Kluber, and I have more interest in guys that are 2 to 3K cheaper.
Yeah, I feel pretty much the same way, and it's more about recent form for Morton than anything else. 6 walks against the Rangers, looked terrible out there. Against Boston, he looked bad. I don't know what's going on with him. And at 12-1, I can get Kluber for a higher price and I feel safer with him. I feel safer with a couple guys that we're gonna get to here shortly that are cheaper. Like Morton's a guy I don't want to take that risk tonight, and I don't know that you're gaining much of an advantage by doing it in tournaments tonight.
Yep, I'm with you. I usually like this. Like the Boston start was very weird, especially because some of the back half guys that were getting to him, like Devers and Jackie Bradley Jr. and the catchers, like that was the concerning part. It wasn't even really the big guys. I think JD Martinez made it homer, but that was a concern for me. And I do usually like targeting against lefty heavy lineups because the strikeouts are higher against lefties. And we've talked about this with Kansas. They just don't have any lefties really outside of a couple.
Yeah, they have like three. And that's pretty much it. Like, yeah, I don't. It's weird. His curveball usage has been down recently.
Yeah, I'm starting to kind of think something.
Yeah, he might be battling like an injury or something. It'd be something to keep it on because like his curveball usage over the last couple games has actually been down. So something to keep an eye on, but I don't think it really matters for tonight. Like I said, there's really not a whole lot of advantage that I can see by taking him in tournaments, especially not that price.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I do like the Astros quite a bit here tonight in this spot. Warm night in Kansas City. You got wind blowing out. Outside of Altuve, no one's over 5K on DraftKings. And then even at this bottom lineup, I mean, some of those guys absolutely raking. Like Evan Gattis, since we talked about him, I was like, I don't know, he might slow down. He has not slowed down.
No. If there is something hotter than like white hot, he would be it. At this point, dude is just absolutely mashing over the past like month, and it is a pretty good spot for him. I think Gaddis is one of the top catcher options on the slate, but the rest of his lineup, like it's still, like you said, still pretty fairly priced, and a lot of them have been hitting pretty well recently.
Yeah, they're coming on, and I want to jump on this kind of stack before it gets like everyone's over 5K. Because like Correa at 4.5 is interesting. Obviously, like Gurriel 3.8, Reddick 3.3, Springer 4.8, Bregman 4.5. Like all these guys are at reasonable prices. And I know Junis is a guy who will throw that slider quite a bit, but we've seen times where his slider is absolutely flat and he is just pounded.
Yeah, that's the biggest concern I have is if that slider's actually working for him. There is no one in this lineup that really hits that slider very well outside of like Gurriel and Reddick. Bregman, Altuve have okay contact rates against it. Just I guess Altuve's 353 WOBA is pretty decent, but a little concerning that he is so reliant on that slider. And if it is working for him, then it could be tough sledding for the Astros, but I'm fine taking a shot on them. Just they're going to be a very popular stack tonight, I think.
Yeah, they are. And you mentioned the note to talk about with Junis. I mean, really, anytime we attack him, as if the slider's on, he's going to be good just because he throws it so often.
Yeah, exactly.
Moving on, Chicago and St. Louis. Michael Walker versus John Lester. This is weird. I don't really have interest in either of these two pitchers. But I'm not really going with anyone here either. Like it's kind of a game I'm just Xing off.
I don't hate either one of these pitchers in this spot. Like Waka, a guy price considered, I guess, on DraftKings, a little tough to consider rolling out. But at this point, it would be dumb to deny that like he is having the best year in his entire career, I think. Strikeouts still not really the name of his game, only 21.5%, but like numbers to both sides of the plate look really good. Righties getting to him a little bit more as far as like StatCast data goes and hard contact goes. But a lot of that isn't really like nothing's really coming out of it. Like he's still been really solid. And like on the flip side, Lester, he's like giving up a run. And like his last two outings, he's gone 7 innings both times. Cardinals, we've been targeting them against lefties, but it hasn't really paid off. I think Lester would be the way that I would lean if I was looking to get exposure to one of these guys.
I would too, because he's the cheapest, and this might be the spot that the Cardinals go off because they faced like 3 crap lefties over the last week and haven't done anything against them, and then like. Because it's baseball, John Lester comes into town and they put up like 8 runs.
It very well could happen, although generally speaking, I think if you look at like over the entire season, the Cardinals versus lefties at home are significantly worse than they are on the road.
Yeah, home road splits have been like severely drastic this year.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm with you. And Lester's always been a guy who has pitched relatively well against the Cards in his career. I just don't have interest, maybe outside of like a Rizzo, who's hit Walker pretty well and also hits that Walker changeup pretty well. Yeah, he'd probably be the only one off I really have interest in as far as bats go.
Yeah, and it is definitely worth noting Jose Martinez on paternity leave. So that's a very, very hot righty that is not going to be in the lineup. But you're going to get Luke Voigt in there, who is a pretty good hitter, but he's still a very young guy.
Yeah, Martinez making hard contact on and off the field.
Mm-hmm. He's hitting home runs.
He is, yeah. A lot of average distance. Late games here, LA and Oakland. Tyler Skaggs taking on Chris Bassett. I like Skaggs in GPPs tonight. He's kind of one of the arms I don't mind using. Him and Stripling both in that 9K range that I have some interest in if you don't want to completely pay up.
Yeah, Stripling's the guy I chose to write about in the pitching article, but you could make a case for Skaggs over him. Dude's been pretty darn solid. Like his 2 June starts, he has like a .69 ERA. It's pretty nice. Just faced the A's not too long ago, 6 1/3 scoreless innings. It's a pretty good spot for him. Like he's not a guy that I have a lot of fear in using against this Oakland lineup.
No, I feel like if we didn't have the aces that we did on the slate, like Skaggs would be a cash game guy for me.
Yeah, I could get behind that.
And, as usual, we talk about, Chris Davis and Matt Olson have some pop against the curveball, but also contact rates below 65%. But, I mean, other than that, there's not a lot of great numbers against his curveball, which he throws fairly often. And, whiff rate, it is below 30%, but, 69% ground ball rate, also nice against that curve.
Very nice. Double 69s.
Yeah, you can't beat that unless it's triple 69s, of course, but that's very rare.
How would that
snap back, focus. I don't have interest. If you want to take Chris Davis because he's just been absolutely on fire of late, I don't mind him in GPPs.
That would probably be it. And I mean, in 6 at-bats against Skaggs over the last 5 years, 667 average and 1 homer and 3 RBIs.
Because Chris Davis has not been homering off slouches of late.
No.
So, yeah, you'd be it. Angel side of things here. Bassett's a guy I don't mind targeting with some Angels bats, but I feel like you can kind of go elsewhere.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm looking too much at attacking Bassett here. Like we don't have a very large sample for him. Like he's one outing this season. Looked really good against Kansas City, but that's not really saying much. And he doesn't even have any numbers from 2016. Did he miss? I feel like he's been around for a while, but
he has. Because I had to look at his career stuff, and he's only thrown I guess 140 innings in the majors. But I mean, it's been more the righties that have gotten to him than anything else.
Yeah. So then I would be obviously Mike Trout, who has been hitting homers like crazy recently. In a pretty good spot, and I guess Ian Kinsler not a terrible option. Like Trout, Kinsler, Upton, I think would be the bats that I have the most interest in.
Yeah, I'm with you. Jesus, that back half of the lineup, what the hell happened?
Everyone got injured.
Yeah, that's not looking good. Yeah, I'm with you. It's the front 3 there.
Although I will say Jabari Blash was absolutely raking in AAA. And recently called up. I mean, he only has 11 plate appearances this season, so I'm willing to overlook those numbers a little bit, but wasn't great against righties dating back to last season, but he's an interesting value option. So is Briseño as far as a catcher option goes.
Yeah. Next game here, we got New York and Arizona. Seth Lugo taking on Zach Godley. Seth Lugo, I feel like is kind of interesting because he's pitched really well. I don't know. I kind of like him in this spot. I know Arizona's heated up a little bit offensively. John Jay helps their contact. They've got Jake Lamb back, and like obviously when they stick with John Ryan Murphy, he's still very solid. But I do think Lugo has some strikeout upside.
I definitely think he has some strikeout upside in the spot. Like we're looking at a guy. I mean, 27% strikeout rate this season, only 21.2 dating back to last year. But like if you look at his splits, nothing really stands out as terrible. Fly balls, middle of the road, hard contact, middle of the road. Not a lot of power to either side of the plate, really, except I guess 163 ISO allowed to righties. If it wasn't for the fact that like 3 of the top 10 hottest hitters in baseball over the last 2 weeks are on the Diamondbacks side of this game, I would probably have more interest in Lugo. He's still a very solid tournament arm at that price tag, though.
Yeah, he is 7,100 on DK. Like I like taking a shot on him as an SP2 because I don't think people will go there.
No, I don't think so either, at least not on like a main slate, although people might be chasing that Yankees performance.
That's true. That late slate's actually kind of fun if you look at it. There's a lot of pitching.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm with you. Like, I'm not exactly really targeting anyone against him. I just 5.6 for Goldschmidt's a little expensive, even though he's been red hot. If you want to take a shot on like a Jake Lamb or Peralta, I don't hate it. But I mean, overall, like I'm not really picking on him.
Ketel Marte is an interesting name. He's one of the guys that I mentioned at like 3 of the top 10 hitters in baseball, like hottest hitters over the last 10 games. He's one of them, which is somewhat shocking. He has like a 5.32 WOBA over the last 2 weeks. That's pretty good. 476 ISO. Ketel Marte is not generally a guy that you look at for power, but some interesting numbers. So I don't necessarily hate him. And then obviously you mentioned Murphy. If he's behind the dish, just a shit ton of power.
Yeah, for real. So Mets side of things, Zach Godley. I don't know what to do with it. I don't have really interest in Godley here. He's just been a guy who I feel like can go with better options, even at that price.
For 1,000 less, you can take Lugo.
Right, and I think that's what I'd rather do. Like, Godley's a guy who's just the walks have been concerning. Like, I don't know. There's just nothing to really like about him right now.
No, I don't have any real interest in him, and like I don't hate taking a couple of bats against him. Obviously, like Conforto, Nimmo, Frazier, kind of the top of that lineup guys. I don't hate using against him.
I don't either. And for some reason, it was a guy who just doesn't get priced up despite being the like only hitter on the Mets.
Yeah, so. It's kind of crazy. Like sites just keep him kind of just chilling where he's at.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't mind him, and I don't mind Conforto. Homered last night. He's an interesting guy there.
Yeah, I guess the threat of getting sent down kind of woke him up.
Yeah, they'll do it. They threatened him with the Miguel Sano treatment.
Man, that's so funny that happened to Sano.
This is a guy people projected for like 50 homers this year. Oh, man. All right. Boston, Seattle, James Paxton take on Rick Porcello. I like Paxton in GPPs.
I love Paxton in GPPs, and I wrote him up in the article. I really like that price tag for him on DraftKings. 10-7, that's really, really good. 10K on FanDuel. He's the second highest priced pitcher. I don't think anyone's going to use him in this spot, and I think it's a really, really good spot for him. Like we've talked about it before, like the Red Sox should be really, 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 really good against lefties, and they're like bottom 5, I think, in the majors this season against lefties. Decent strikeout rates, like 24%. Yeah, I really like Paxton here.
I do too. Like look at this, like it's the usual names you got to get around here. Like it's Betts, Bogarts, Martinez. Get around them. And Martinez has been a guy still striking out a lot against lefties, 33% this year. I don't worry too much against Benintendi in this spot. I know Paxton's given up a little bit to lefties, and Benintendi's bad against lefties, but yeah, Paxton just has a lot of strikeout upside that I don't feel like people are going to catch on to.
No, and it's kind of weird. Like behind Mookie Betts, Benintendi's been the second best hitter against lefties this season. That should tell you something about how bad this team has been against lefties. Like
Yeah.
224 ISO, 313 WOBA, but like 74% contact rate. Like you, I'm really scared of Mookie Betts. Like I hope they just like intentionally walk him every time he comes up, or like they just like throw curveballs and nothing else, because he can't really hit the curveball very well. But like outside of him, like I'm not even that scared of JD Martinez in the spot. Like a lot of hard contact to lefties, but a lot of it's on the ground, and the strikeout rate, as you mentioned, is up. Like
Yeah.
it's not a spot. Like he has not been the JD Martinez that we expect
No,
against
at least not against lefties. Yeah, I mean, and there's three projected catchers in this lineup that have just been absolute crap this year. So if you're telling me, and even Eduardo Nunez, despite being a right-handed bat, he sucks against lefties, and I just overall, I think he sucks in general. But yeah, Nunez, Devers, Swihart, Vasquez, Leon. Like if you're telling me Paxton gets that in the bottom half, just sign me up.
And this projected lineup has a 27.6% strikeout rate this season against lefties.
Yeah, and that's even with Betts just trying his best to weigh it down.
Betts and Vasquez both, like Vasquez 11.6, Betts 7.5, and they're still like 27, almost 28% strikeout rate against lefties.
Yeah, so I don't mind some big maple there.
There you go.
Other side of this one, Rick Porcello. I think there's a couple interesting bats against him. I'm kind of mainly looking at the lefties here, like a Kyle Seager. I think is an interesting GPP option, but there's no doubt Mitch Haniger, man, just been absolutely on fire, and he's only 4.2.
Yeah, he's definitely someone that I do have a little bit of interest in. Porcello, still kind of like sinker slider guy. Haniger, 370 WOBA against sinkers, 285 ISO against the slider. Obviously, not great contact rates, but I mean, still someone that I'd be willing to take a shot on. But it is mostly the lefties, like you mentioned, Seager, um, D. Gordon at the top of that order, Denard Span, who has actually flashed some power this season, which is kind of crazy. I don't hate those guys.
No, I don't either. I think they're all interesting. And Denard Span against sinkers. I mean, 396 will about 187 ISO.
Yeah, he's like I said, he's flashed a little bit of old man power.
I like it. Yeah, like you said, he looks like a Pirates Caribbean extra.
There you go.
Last game of the night here, we got Derek Holland and Ross Stripling. Ross Stripling, man, just deserves everything he's getting right now, all the praise. Like he's been absolutely solid, and I'm gonna go back to the well.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where I feel like he's way too cheap. He should be a guy that is priced up in the mid 10Ks at this point, and he's just not. Like he's probably like if I'm fading Kluber like on FanDuel, Ross Stripling is my SP1 is my pitcher for like cash games. Like I feel like it's just a really safe spot for him, and obviously he has to get around like Andrew McCutchen and Brandon Crawford, who have been ridiculously hot recently, but he's so good against righties. Like I'm not that worried about those guys. Well, Crawford, I guess lefty, but he's even better against lefties.
Yeah, I'm with you. Just relies on that good slider. He has it under control. That curveball, that's his money pitch as far as the strikeouts go. He's been getting a 39% whiff rate on it. Hitters have a 123 WOBA against it this year. Like everything about him has just really stood out. No walks, the strikeouts are there. Should get some run support as well here tonight because I do like some Dodgers bats against Holland.
Yeah, everything is coming up good for Stripling, and if you're fading the top tier arms and you want to and you don't want to take that shot on Paxton, Stripling's the guy.
Yeah. And then, as we mentioned, Holland, the guy dating back to last year, 391 WOBA, 256 ISO to right-handers with a 41% contact rates. If I'm not playing Nolan Arenado, it's Justin Turner.
Yeah, I could definitely get behind that. Justin Turner, a guy that we definitely like against lefties. I mean, some pretty good numbers: 303 ISO, 473 WOBA against him dating back to last season. That's pretty solid, and some pretty good numbers against Holland's pitches. I mean, 365 WOBA against sinkers, 171 ISO, 90% contact rate, and he's putting that ball in the air like only 37% ground ball rate. So pretty good spot for him. I really like Chris Taylor here as well. 193 ISO, 380 WOBA, 91% contact rate against sinkers. Pretty good spot for him too. And even my dude Max Muncy, and definitely in play here if he makes the lineup.
Yeah, like small sample size, but dude's still crushing both handedness. I'm with you. Matt Kemp also in play here, 284 ISO, 436 WOBA. Off that sinker, 4-weight WOBA, 250 ISO. I don't feel like he's too badly priced either.
No, and even like Kike Hernandez, 3,300 price just kind of still stays the same. And obviously, you're hoping he does what he's going to do in the first couple at bats because Holland comes out of the game and might face righties, and Kike not very good against righties. But this entire lineup definitely in play. Like Puig's the only guy that hasn't, dating back to last season, hasn't really shown a lot of power or good numbers against lefties. Like everyone else has like a 340 or higher WOBA against them, and then you have Puig at 289.
Yeah, I don't get it. Yeah, he's the guy who just hasn't hit lefties. And if you want to go past like Logan Forsythe, Austin Barnes, or two guys, if you need a cheap bat, I don't hate them.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, good spot here for the Dodgers. Home run calls. I feel like there's a lot of ways to go here tonight.
There are. I'm going to hit up some Austin Meadows and Corey Spangenberg.
Ooh, I like it. I'm going to go Matt Adams. Matt Adams, and give me some Ian Desmond.
I dig it.
So that's it for us. You can head over to DaveFantasyCafe.com. Check out our tools and content for Friday. We'll be back on Monday, and good luck tonight.
Good luck.